That's a mismatch all around. I don't think Cleveland has anybody that can guard Jalen Brunson in this series. That's where it comes in. Cat, you have Evan Mobley. If he plays two-way like he's played in that last series against Detroit, he can kind of somewhat neutralize Carl Sabonis, as you would say. Like, he's out there playing like Arvidas Sabonis. But when it comes to Jalen Brunson, you have Donovan Mitchell, you have James Harden. Like, they're decent size, but Jalen Brunson's too quick. He's too crap.
The New York Knicks have spent the last 8 days resting, recovering, and watching the rest of the East wear itself out. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Cavaliers just survived a brutal Game 7, then marched into Detroit and embarrassed the conference's top seed with a 31-point blowout. Donovan Mitchell finished with 26 points, 8 assists, and 0 turnovers. Evan Mobley dominated with 21 and 12. Jarrett Allen added 23, and Sam Merrill came off the bench raining threes like it was practice. On paper, both teams look sharp heading into this series. The difference is one side arrives refreshed, while the other arrives battle-tested.
3 seconds left. Brunson got it. Jalen Brunson ends the first half with a bang. Robinson steps up. Mitchell right past him. Oh, Mitchell! He is a magician.
These two teams took completely different roads to this moment. The Knicks have bulldozed their way through the Eastern Conference, outscoring opponents by 19.4 points per game through 2 playoff rounds. That's the best point differential through 2 rounds since the NBA adopted the 16-team playoff format in 1984. Nobody has entered the conference finals this dominant in more than 40 years. Cleveland, meanwhile, had to survive every punch imaginable. 7 hard games against Toronto. Another 7-game war against Detroit, where they walked into the home arena of the East's top seed and beat them into submission for 4 straight quarters. And that's what makes this matchup so fascinating. One team arrives rested and rolling. The other arrives tested and sharpened by chaos. So what's actually going to decide this series? 3 things: the transformation that quietly turned New York into the most dangerous offense left in the East, the one Cleveland player who controls how high the Cavaliers can climb, and the hidden matchup inside this matchup that almost nobody is talking about enough. Let's start with the Knicks, because something very real changed with this team over the last few weeks. When New York fell behind Atlanta 2-1 in the first round, the panic hit instantly. People were saying Jalen Brunson couldn't carry the offense alone. That Karl-Anthony Towns would become unplayable defensively once the games mattered most. It felt like the same old Knicks story all over again. Then everything flipped. New York ripped off 7 straight wins. They swept Philadelphia. They dropped 144 points in a closeout game and tied the NBA playoff record with 25 made threes. Somewhere during that run, this offense evolved from dangerous into overwhelming. Before getting into exactly what changed, look at the pieces Cleveland has to deal with. Jalen Brunson remains the heartbeat of everything. He's averaging 27.4 points and 6.1 assists per game this postseason while shooting nearly 41% from deep. Late clock possessions belong to him. Tight games belong to him. Cleveland's defense starts with solving Brunson, and that's easier said than done. The Cavs will throw multiple bodies at him: Max Struss, Dennis Schroeder, even Isaac Okoro or Craig Porter Jr. in stretches, while Jarrett Allen waits in drop coverage near the rim. Brunson has spent 2 straight playoff rounds proving he doesn't really care who's guarding him. He gets to his spots anyway. Then there's Karl-Anthony Towns, who quietly became the centerpiece of New York's offensive explosion during the Atlanta series. Since that adjustment, Towns has looked unstoppable: 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 6.6 assists per game on absurd efficiency, 58% from the field and 48% from 3. He's the true matchup nightmare in this series because Cleveland has to decide whether to guard him like a center or survive him like a wing. Either choice creates problems.
Cutting Clarkson hits a right-hand layup on McCollum. 8 assists in 21 minutes for Karl-Anthony Towns.
OG Anunoby is the swing piece for New York. When he's healthy, the entire ceiling of this team changes. Through the playoffs, he's averaging 21 points per game on a ridiculous 62% shooting from the field and 54% from 3. That alone would make him a massive factor, but he's also the Knicks' best perimeter defender. He missed the final 2 games of the Sixers series with a hamstring issue, but he returned to full practice on May 15th. If he's anywhere close to full strength, Cleveland suddenly has a completely different problem to solve on both ends of the floor. Then there's Mikal Bridges, who somehow keeps becoming more important the quieter he plays. He's averaging 13 points on 59% shooting while doing all the connective tissue work that winning teams need. He guards multiple positions, spaces the floor, cuts at the right time, and never hijacks possessions. Bridges doesn't need the ball to control a game, and that's exactly why he fits so perfectly next to Brunson and Towns. Josh Hart continues to be one of the weirdest and most valuable role players in basketball. 9 rebounds per game from a wing is absurd. He turns defensive stops into instant transition offense, crashes the glass like a power forward, and creates extra possessions through sheer effort. Every playoff team talks about winning the margins. Hart practically lives there. And the Knicks' depth has quietly become one of the biggest reasons they look so dangerous. Miles McBride exploded for 25 points and 7 made threes in the Game 4 closeout against Philadelphia, but his real value comes on defense. He's one of New York's best point-of-attack defenders and gives them another body to throw at Cleveland's guards. Mitchell Robinson remains a terrifying offensive rebounder and rim protector, shooting 77% because nearly every touch he gets ends with a dunk at the rim. Jordan Clarkson gives New York instant scoring juice off the bench and has quietly become more engaged defensively over the last few weeks. Landry Shamet provides spacing and movement shooting, while Jose Alvarado brings chaos. Full court pressure, deflections, charges, pest behavior. He's the type of player who can make life miserable for ball handlers over a 7-game series. But the real shift, the thing that changed New York from a good playoff offense into maybe the most dangerous one left standing, is what they've done with Karl-Anthony Towns. The Knicks stopped using him strictly as a finisher or spot-up shooter and started putting the ball in his hands as a true offensive creator. That changes everything. For the last 2 years, New York's offense has basically been Jalen Brunson isolation and survive the rest. Brunson would create advantages from nothing, force help defenders to collapse, and hope shooters knock down enough open looks. It worked, but it also put a massive burden on him every single possession. Now they've got a 7-footer initiating offense from the elbow, the top of the key, and the short roll. Towns is making reads. He's running actions. He's drawing defenders away from the rim and picking teams apart with passing. Suddenly Brunson doesn't have to create every advantage himself. He can work off the ball more often, attack rotating defenses instead of set ones, and conserve energy for late-game moments. That means more catch-and-shoot threes, more attacking closeouts, and fewer possessions where he has to dance against 2 defenders from a standstill. And this specific wrinkle is brutal for Cleveland because of how the Cavaliers are built defensively. Cleveland's entire defensive identity revolves around Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen protecting the paint. They're one of the best defensive frontcourts in basketball because they erase drives vertically, recover quickly, and funnel offenses into difficult shots at the rim. But what happens when the player you're supposed to protect the paint against is standing 25 feet away running the offense? That's where the problem starts. Option 1, stay home near the rim. If Cleveland does that, Towns gets clean looks from 3 or starts dissecting the defense with passes to cutters and shooters. He's shooting nearly 48% from deep this postseason. Leaving him open is basically surrender. Option 2, bring Mobley or Allen up to guard him. Now the rim protection disappears, and Brunson suddenly has open lanes to the paint. Once Brunson gets downhill, the entire defense bends. He gets to his floater, forces rotations, and sprays the ball to shooters knocking down over 40% from 3. There's no clean answer. That's why New York suddenly feels so overwhelming right now. They have the hottest offense left in the playoffs, a top 3 defense, long versatile wings, the rest advantage, and an offensive system teams haven't fully figured out yet. Now, the obvious counterargument is sustainability. The Knicks are shooting 40.8% from 3 across the playoffs. That number probably comes down at some point. If New York cools off from deep for even 2 games, the offense becomes much more Brunson dependent again. That's Cleveland's opening. That's the crack in the armor. But to actually exploit that opening, the Cavaliers need one specific player to become a true star in this series. Before getting there, though, you have to understand Cleveland's rotation. Donovan Mitchell is still the alpha. He's averaging 25.6 points per game this postseason and remains one of the most explosive shot creators left in the playoffs. He can score at all 3 levels, collapse defenses off the dribble, and as Game 7 against Detroit showed, he can also control a game as a playmaker when needed. The question with Mitchell has never been talent. It's efficiency under playoff pressure against elite defenses. James Harden completely changed Cleveland after arriving at the trade deadline. He's averaging 20.9 points, 6.2 assists, and 2 steals per game in the postseason while organizing the offense in the half court. He slows the game down when it gets chaotic and gives Cleveland another high-level creator next to Mitchell. But at 36 years old, after surviving 2 exhausting 7-game series, there's a legitimate question about how much he has left physically as this series drags deeper. Then there's Evan Mobley, the player who may quietly decide everything for Cleveland. Jarrett Allen remains the rim-running force. 12 points, 7 rebounds, 65% shooting, and a massive 23-point performance in Game 7. His role is simple but crucial: punish defenses at the rim every time New York rotates help away from him. Max Strus provides spacing and movement shooting. Sam Merrill just exploded for 23 points and 5 threes in Game 7 and can swing quarters by himself when he catches fire. Dean Wade offers dependable frontcourt depth. Dennis Schroeder brings downhill pressure and toughness off the bench. Keon Ellis and Jalen Tyson give Cleveland extra defensive bodies to throw at New York's wings over the course of a long series. That's the rotation. Now here's why Evan Mobley is the player who actually determines whether Cleveland can survive this matchup. Everybody is going to focus on Donovan Mitchell first. He's the Cavaliers' superstar, the closer, the guy who just dropped 26 points with 8 assists and 0 turnovers in a Game 7 blowout. He's the headline name, the engine of Cleveland's offense, and the player most people naturally point to when talking about whether the Cavs can survive this series. But the truth is, Mitchell might not actually be the player who determines who wins. That responsibility may belong to Evan Mobley. Mitchell's scoring points has never been the question. He's done that his entire career. The concern entering these playoffs was whether he could consistently handle pressure defenses without forcing bad shots or stalling the offense. Through Cleveland's first 13 playoff games, the answer honestly looked shaky. He hadn't recorded more than 5 assists in a game, and his assist-to-turnover ratio sat at just 1.15. When defenses trapped him or forced the ball out of his hands, the Cavs' offense often stopped flowing. Possessions became stagnant. The ball came back to Mitchell, and Cleveland ended up living on difficult isolation attempts late in the shot clock. Then came Game 7. 8 assists. 0 turnovers. Calm under pressure. Instead of forcing shots, Mitchell manipulated the defense and trusted the pass. That version of him changes the ceiling of this team completely. If Cleveland gets the composed, playmaking version of Donovan Mitchell instead of the tunnel vision scorer version, suddenly the Cavs become far more dangerous than people gave them credit for a week ago. But there's an important catch here. Detroit's defense is not New York's defense. The Knicks have layers. They can throw OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart at Mitchell in waves. 3 long, physical, relentless defenders who all bring different problems. Bridges uses length and anticipation. Hart brings nonstop energy and physicality. Anunoby might be the best pure matchup defender of the group when healthy. New York's goal is simple: wall off the paint, stay attached to shooters, and force Mitchell into difficult decisions over size and pressure. And when Mitchell gives the ball up, the next player touching it is probably going to be Evan Mobley. That's where the series truly swings for Cleveland. If Mobley catches the ball at the elbow or on the short roll and simply hesitates, resets the offense, or swings the ball back out without attacking the defense, the Knicks win the possession. Their rotations recover. The defenders get reset. Brunson and Towns get a breather. Cleveland ends up right back where it started, asking Mitchell or Harden to create something difficult late in the clock. But if Mobley becomes aggressive, everything changes. If he attacks closeouts immediately, if he drives into open space, if he finds Allen diving to the rim, if he kicks out to shooters before the defense rotates, then New York's pressure starts working against itself. Suddenly the traps create openings. Suddenly the defense bends. Suddenly Cleveland has real offensive flow instead of isolation basketball. That's why Mobley is the swing player. For the postseason, he's averaging 17 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks on 54% shooting. Those numbers don't fully capture his impact because Mobley's value isn't just production. It's connective tissue. He's the player who decides whether Cleveland's offense breathes or suffocates. We've already seen both versions during this playoff run. In Game 5 against Detroit, Mobley attacked confidently, made quick reads, and hit a massive fourth-quarter 3. In Game 7, he stayed aggressive again, forcing the Pistons to respect him as both a scorer and playmaker. When he plays like that, Cleveland looks balanced and dangerous. When he fades into the background, the offense becomes overly dependent on Mitchell heroics. The Knicks know this. Mike Brown knows this. New York's defensive game plan is almost certainly designed around making Mobley the decision maker. They're going to bait him into becoming the release valve and then test whether he can consistently punish them for it.